Let's get the thoughts of technology expert Paul Armstrong, who's founder of TBD Group. And what did OpenAI do this week? Good to see you on the programme today. A lot of people arguing it's running before it's learned how to walk, really, this technology. I mean, after all, we were talking about it occasionally. Now it's not out of the headlines, is it?
Yeah, it's certainly picking up. There's interesting steam behind all of the AI trends at the moment, whether you're looking at investment or simply one area of it, generative AI, which is what ChatGPT falls under. On the one hand, you've got sort of AI helping to create new proteins to help fight Alzheimer's. On the other, people are using it to, say, write emails and that sort of stuff. You definitely also then have the more hard edge people who are, potentially using it for nefarious issues. And that's the real worry at the moment. We just don't know enough about who they are.
So when you talk about nefarious issues, what do you have in mind?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it can be a lot of things. I don't want to put ideas in people's heads, but you could certainly use AI to help people determine where the best place is to put explosive devices or things like that. It's not definitely being used for that. I'm definitely not saying that. That is just a potential that could be out there. But it is important to remember that AI is much, much bigger than just ChatGPT and generative AI.
Should we embrace AI or be fearing it?
I think if we embrace it sensibly, that's a really smart thing to do. As with any technology, it's how we choose to apply it that really matters. The issue comes when we don't have enough sort of regulation around it, or people just abuse it, if that makes sense. And it's really important to sort of figure out who owns the technology. And as we're seeing now, who owns the computer's output, as it were. There's lots of copyright issues going through the courts at the moment. Much bigger than that, it's the issues around people who are using it badly, potentially that don't think about these bad outcomes before they're creating things.
How do governments need to approach it? I'm mindful of what Sir Tony Blair had to say, talking about a level of ignorance, didn't he, about how to regulate?
Yeah, they definitely need to, in my opinion, step up their knowledge and awareness of what these tools can be used for right now. And also, let's, imagine what they might be used for in the future. At the moment, a lot of the companies, including OpenAI, have been very sort of clear. They aren't sure how these things work 100%. So that's a real red flag for me, and definitely something governments need to get their heads around.
And what about US and China, how they're embracing this? I think they've got different approaches towards artificial intelligence. Is one leading in the race, one country above the other?
Well, I think if you ask either of them, they both say they're leaders in the field, but fundamentally their differences, their approaches differ fundamentally. China is more of a top-down approach. They prefer to get the government money and guidance, whereas the US is much more grassroots and decentralized, and they're led by, the private sector, essentially, AI, OpenAI, Google, that sort of thing. China tends to focus more on AI that has societal goals, more than business ones, for the moment at least, and regulation-wise, the US seems to be sort of like moving towards more scrutiny of what's happening already, so that it's a fair playing field. It would be fair to say that both rely on each other at the moment, but the US is certainly pulling some levers to affect the future of the AI race for China, when it's holding back chips and things like that.
And how prepared are we for AI as a country, as a nation, as a world?
I think that differs depending on where you are in the world. We're starting to see legal challenges to the way these models have been built. And don't forget, again, I preface everyone with, like, the generative AI, the ChatGPT is a very small part of AI. There's a lot more good stuff coming from AI as well. But that's the important thing to realize is even though it's a very small part, it's had a massive impact already. And most people in the world, I would say 1 in 10 have probably ever used any form of AI, if that makes sense. We've got a lot more people to get on board. So because it's disrupted so much at the moment, we need to start really having good chats with people, not just the people who are making it, but the people who are using it as well, so that we get them to use it sensibly.
I suppose many of these things come and go, don't they, over time? But this is certainly here to stay. So what will you tell people? What can you say to people who are potentially worried that it'll take their jobs, affect how we live, basically, affect livelihoods, affect the planet, everything?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is educate yourself as to what the realities actually are. We try and do that with the newsletter all the time. We give people the real sort of advice on what's actually happening against the hype and that sort of thing. And knowing who the main players are, that's the key one at the moment. A lot of people are getting funded and having an AI startup here and there and everywhere, but most people are actually using the main players in some way, shape or form. So understanding those, that's the real sort of key one. But again, using multiple sources, not relying on ChatGPT as the only thing that you use. You've got Google's Bard out there as well. There's a lot more tools. You can get a lot of value from them, but you must know how they work.
Well, that's a subject we will be coming back to much more in the coming days, weeks and months, isn't it? Paul Armstrong, nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Pleasure.